What's going on with the Capitol Police and January 6th? Two little data points jump out at me. The first one is Capitol Hill police officers committing suicide. Now, why would they do that? The left, of course, automatically assumes, without, by the way, a shred of evidence, that these are people who are just emotionally traumatized by the violent sedition of January 6th. And so 6 months later, they're like, okay, that's it, I'm out of here. That's one explanation. But a more plausible explanation, I think, is that some of these Capitol Police officers are pretty conservative. Policemen in general tend to be. And these are people who have been, ever since January 6th, hounded by Pelosi and by the left and by their own leaders for their own reasons to lie, to create a false narrative, to make something of January 6th that it really wasn't, and to destroy the lives of all the people who were involved in January 6th. And so what's happening is that these Capitol Police officers are beginning to feel a pang of conscience. They're beginning to feel, wow, do I want to participate as a police officer dedicated to the upholding the rule of law in this scandalous depredation of law, in this police state operation that is apparently authorized by the Speaker of the House? Now, what makes me think that we are looking at a kind of police state operation, or let's call it Nancy Pelosi's private militia? Well, I've been very interested in the way that Pelosi has been empowering the Capitol Police and trying to provide funding for them, by the way. There's a bill that's passed the House very narrowly, hasn't passed yet the Senate, to give the Capitol Police all kinds of money and authorization to do things that they previously haven't. Recently, Matt Gaetz made an observation in one of his talks. He said, quote, "What in the heck is the Capitol Police doing setting up an office in Tampa, Florida?" Very good question. Here's the answer for it. The Capitol Police are basically trying to expand their operations nationwide. They're trying to get the idea, or promote the idea, this is the leadership in league with Pelosi, that we got to prevent an event like January 6th, and to do that, we've got to monitor extremist behavior across the country. Well, how do we do that? The Capitol Police now are using Army surveillance gear to monitor Americans and, quote, identify emerging threats. Now, wait a minute. Aren't the Capitol Police supposed to protect the Capitol? And don't we have another organization? Ever heard of the Federal Bureau of Investigation that is supposed to monitor threats on a nationwide level? Since when does a local police turn into a national kind of militia, empowered to do all kinds of things that it never did before, and as we will see, without oversight? So the Capitol Police now will start using Army surveillance equipment to monitor Americans. They're turning the force into, quote, an intelligence-based protective agency. Intelligence-based. What do they mean? They've taken possession of 8 of these so-called, they're called PSSG systems, persistent surveillance systems. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has approved this. And so they're able to do high-definition surveillance. Now, by the way, this is technology that came out of the military. This is technology that was used by the U.S. government in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was used to observe large areas and monitor them day and night, 24 hours a day. So, according to the Capitol Police, this kind of surveillance, which they call, quote, state-of-the-art surveillance, is intended to, quote, enhance the ability to detect and monitor threat activity. As if to say, we now need to turn the kind of attention that we've been giving to the Taliban and to ISIS onto fellow Americans. And by the way, the Capitol Police are doing it. Normally when federal agencies like the FBI undertake this kind of activity, they're part of the executive branch, and so they're subject to freedom of information requests. They're subject to certain types of court oversight to make sure that they are carrying out their functions within the bounds of the law. But here's the difference. The Capitol Police is not bound by any of this. They don't have to respond to FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests. They're not under the same kind of court oversight. Why? Because they are a branch of the legislature. So it's not possible for a court to say you're breaking the law. Why? Because the legislature, which is to say under the supervision of Nancy Pelosi, makes the law. So since the Capitol Police are directly accountable to the legislature, i.e. to the Speaker of the House, I'm quoting here from a report that was put out by Roll Call last summer. It says, quote, Congress is not itself subject to the law, because it is the law, and the Capitol Police as a component of the legislative branch is also exempt from any FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, request. So what you have here is a rogue agency. Rogue in the sense that it operates at the behest of Pelosi. It's very clear that all those lying officers that came up there and said, oh, there was a crowd shouting racial slogans at me, a complete made-up lie. But these lies were scripted. You could even see one of the officers who basically could hardly read English. He was kind of talking at the 4th grade level, but he was reading these beautifully scripted sentences because obviously they were just put in front of him and they said, basically, read this. So you have a pathetic, embarrassing organization, but nevertheless one that, because of the power that is being given to it by the government and by Pelosi, is also extremely dangerous.